we get started here? This is a recorded video. My name's Tom DeKaiser. I'm the superintendent of Whitmore Lake Public Schools, and this is the second Zoom meeting that we're doing to give information to our community about an upcoming bond on August 6th. We're going to go through just a handful of slides and then open it up to any questions people might have. We also have some people who have submitted questions ahead of time that we'd like to address. Sometimes I skip over this first slide, but I really want to emphasize 4 words: safeguarding today, transforming tomorrow. This bond is going to immediately address security issues in all of our buildings. In particular, we're going to invest a lot of dollars into safeguarding our elementary school, which has an unusual entryway that was popular probably when the facility was built in the 90s. But not so popular now. It gives anyone who enters the building immediate access to areas where we have students congregating, and that's just not how schools should be built today. So in collaboration with law enforcement and safety officers, we decided that it would be good to include in this bond a different type of entryway, and that's a big price tag under safeguarding, but just an example of a priority that we have going into this August 6th bond election. Transforming tomorrow, 2 other important words that sometimes we just skip right over, but not only are we trying to improve the safety of our school, which can include things that people don't consider necessarily when they're looking at safety, like, do we have access to warm, cool, dry air? And the answer is no, not in all of our buildings. But the transformation generally is what I refer to as we have a host of young students that are going to be migrating up into our schools. We're going to see growth rates of 25% pretty consistently, kindergarten, first, second, third grade, and beyond for the next 5 years. And we really want to get ready for that. In 10 years, of course, those kids are going to matriculate then to a high school. And so having your buildings ready academically with programming and facilities that can match that is important. It's part of the transformation that a school district like Whitmore Lake is going to go through. Why don't we move on to the next slide and we can figure out how we got to this point in time. I like to say a facility assessment. We started with a facility assessment. Really, it started with a flooded classroom, a classroom that flooded multiple times, actually. And an investigation into why it was happening. And at some point, we had put some fixes on things in this district just to get by, but our board was adamant that they wanted to get to the bottom of some of these facility issues. And ultimately, we contracted professional architects, engineers, and general contractors to look not just at some of the issues associated with flooding, but really the whole district, what needed to be fixed, and what did we need to prioritize. They came back with over $80 million of repairs. We did a quick bond analysis of that, and it looked like we'd have to generate over 4 mills, or we'd have to levy over 4 mills to generate that type of revenue. Our board thought that was just too much money. And so we went back to the drawing board. We scaled it back, used some selective replacements and how we would allocate dollars, and we got it down to under 60, in fact, $53.5 million. We played a little bit further with how we would allocate those the bonds to get that revenue, and we came up with a 2.55 mil increase, which would generate that money. We then went to a bond steering committee and shared that with them, and also did a survey of about 300 residents in the area. Both came back very positive and supportive of this $53.5 million 2.55 mil tax. So it was at that point that we got serious. We went to the Department of Treasury, got a bond qualification application in, and were approved. And so this got us onto the ballot on August 6th. So that's kind of where we are at this point in time, how we got there, and why. A lot of people want to know how we're spending this money. This um, the bond qualification process that I talked about kind of breaks things down by building, but um, it's important for I think the voters in this community to understand that this money is going to be used throughout the district. Every building gets touched where there's Whitmore Lake Public School students involved. The biggest priority that I have is making sure that we have safe buildings and that the security and safety of those kids going into those buildings is taken care of. So you can see in this first circle or bucket, we sometimes call them, that we've allocated $5.5 million district-wide to safety improvements. And like I said, some of that is just remodeling. Other things involve just making sure your doors shut. If your doors aren't shutting tightly, that is a security risk. And I will tell you, with a lot of humidity that we've had lately, any door that has a wooden core is swelling up, and we have to be extra cautious with how those doors work. If we have continued problems with them, then we're going to replace those doors, and we have to price that out. When you do that district-wide, it becomes a pretty big number. There's other vulnerable areas of our district, like our bus lot right now is a gated lot, but it's manually opened and closed, and it stays open a lot. That's a security concern. I'd like to address that. Even campus lighting. We have old lights in some of our areas, and they just need to be replaced. Even at our high school, which is going to be 20 years old soon, is operating with dim lights in some areas. And our security, when you're dropping kids off at 11 o'clock at night from a game that they played 2 hours away, I want well-lit areas that are consistently well-lit. All that stuff is considered safety and security. The next bucket is the big bucket, and that's that's aging infrastructure. That's replacing broken pieces of equipment and equipment that's worn out, even parking lots that are worn out and damaged beyond repair. That has a big price tag, but sorely needed. The next bucket is what we call our elementary school transformation. I mentioned this earlier. We're going to experience about 25% growth in our early elementary in the next few years. And this is based on the number of kids that are in our daycare and preschool programs. Those kids are coming and filling up these programs and then matriculating into our elementary. This pattern is not going to stop. If you look at a 10-year pattern, you'll see it's pretty consistently, an increase in population in those areas is going to consistently add more and more kids. So we want to have new furniture ready for those kids. We want to have our countertops, which are starting to buckle, and if they have sinks, they're starting to fall in. We want to replace all that. We want good classroom seating. We want a library that can accommodate the needs of our kids at this point in time. We've also added things like STEM classrooms in the past couple of years that are being taught out of traditional classrooms. And that's really not, we can repurpose and modernize those classrooms to adjust to the content that we're teaching and really match, I think, the quality of the programming with the quality of our staffing and our facility. Actually, our programming and our staffing should match, what we're offering. And so we also have a few other things on there, like playground expansion. We're not looking at doing a massive addition, but we have a new section and an old section. And we just like to match what we currently have. There's old landscaping in the area. We have old fencing, things like that. All that stuff should be modernized. The next portion is our Main Street campus. We are going to replace HVAC and infrastructure and parking structures here as well. But we do have a lot of kids in this facility. We have a charter program, and we have our own programming, our Whitmore Lake programming. There's about 400 kids on this campus, and about 150 of them reside on the south side of the campus, which is Whitmore Lake kids. And it's those areas that we want to address. We want, better bathroom facilities that match the age of the kids. We'd like to enhance our outside learning spaces and repurpose the way our classrooms work with these young learners. And then the last bucket is our middle school, high school campus. We have a theater that's 20 years old. We've been updating bleachers in there. We'd like to improve the stage, the lighting, the sound systems, our athletic facilities. We're constantly trying to mitigate water that comes onto the site, and to make them playable. We'll be addressing that. We have track issue that could probably get some attention as well. And then our classrooms will get, of course, repairs to floors and furniture upgrades for students. So when you add it all up, it comes to $53.5 million. We did put together this slide. I won't go over it in much detail. This, of course, is a tax increase, and we thought it was important for voters to understand that, you know, where they live and the size of their home and how it's taxed impacts how much they're going to pay annually for this. In general, if you live in a home that's valued at $300,000, it has a taxable value of $150,000. This increase is about $383 a year, which I don't want to downplay. It can mean a lot to a family, but we kind of broke it down on a monthly basis so you can see it doesn't look like a lot, but it can be a lot to a family struggling. But there will be a big impact. Typically, school districts that invest this type of money into their facilities do see increased home values. Next slide, please, Maria. Probably the biggest source of angst among our board, and probably the biggest volume of questions I field is what the ballot actually says. And a lot of the information here is statutorily required. We fight and fight about it because it gets very confusing, and it takes a lot of knowledge of taxation to understand what is actually being said here. But if you just look at the first paragraph, which is pretty plain, it says that we are asking for $53.5 million. And then the next stanza, which identifies areas that we want to address. And these are our estimations. Anything that we could address, we want to include in this. We're not necessarily going to erect a building, but we'll probably change some of the classrooms and how things flow in each building. But you have to use the word erecting because things are going to change on the classroom level. We, of course, talked about furnishing and equipping our school buildings based on some of the remodeling that we want to do. I used the STEM example. We've talked about security improvements and inquiring instructional technologies. That's a small part of this budget, this bond, but it is something we probably will address, so it actually has to go into the language, just so people know that that's something we could do. We've talked about improving playgrounds and athletic fields, parking lots, driveways, sidewalks, and our sites in general. We're also talking about purchasing more buses, which is always a good idea anytime you have a bond to capitalize on grabbing a few more so you don't have to pay for those out of your general fund. The next several paragraphs really talk about how this money is going to be collected, how it's going to be paid back, how we participate in the school bond loan fund, which is the state's way of helping us get over certain hurdles associated with, the interest rates on bonds and things. This is bond financing is not, and taxation associated with it is not finance 101 stuff. It's finance 401 stuff. Really, it almost deserves, if people are interested, its own separate meeting just to go through all the nuances of how we're going to collect it and how we're going to pay it back. And certainly if people are interested in that, I can set that up. But I think for the purposes of this Zoom meeting, it's important just to note that our ballot language is set statutorily. And it's important to note what we're asking for in dollar amounts and what we're going to do with those dollars. If people have not already voted ahead of time, we do want to certainly remind them that um, in-person voting is on August 6th. That's Tuesday, August 6th. Polls will be open early and sunrise to sunset. And again, we are asking people to consider all aspects of our facilities in this ballot initiative. And certainly if people have more questions, we're always asking them to reach out to me, hit our website, send emails to our website through an info@wlps.net, and we will respond to those. We do it every week for people who have questions about it. I'm looking in our question bank, our chat bank, to see if any questions have been placed there live. I see a comment really just thanking us for prioritizing safety. Of course, it is safety, academics are always our top two priorities. And there'll be a lot of coverage in this bond in those two areas. I have another question. What happens if the bond fails? Well, I don't want to get doom and gloom. I like to think that we can accomplish anything, but I will tell you there will be some rapid reprioritization of funds. I hate to have to prioritize potholes over school safety, but we will be doing some of that. Do we have adequate safety in our buildings? Evaluate it. If we feel we do, we won't go any further with enhancing it. We'll just have to address then some of the pothole needs. We won't be able to replace parking lots. We'll have to rely heavily on the term select areas. We'll have to probably leverage our sinking fund and max it out and even ask for an extension. I will tell you that I think Whitmore Lakes board is being very wise in progressing toward what's called an energy bond. That is a way of getting some new equipment and paying the difference between what you save in energy costs and what the equipment costs. So you will be able to get some new things and address some of the high need areas, but that's going to be very small portions of our district will be addressed with that. So if it doesn't pass, you're basically going to have to just fix what is broken and what's immediately impacting your safety and your security of your students, and then be very selective about what academic enhancements you want to make. We tend to use our general fund for instructional staffing and programming. We don't like to dip into it to fix roofs. But that also will probably happen in the future. And that further diminishes the quality of staff that you can attract with higher salaries and things. I've had a lot of questions. I see another one here. What is the timeline for security enhancements to be complete? Additional buses if the bond passes. So Rachel, this bond, if it passes in August, we can start collecting some of those dollars to do some immediate things. Safety and security is one of the things that we want to do immediately. Something like a redesign of your elementary really takes about a year to plan. And so like if we're rolling into the summer of 25, you're really planning and you're not, really starting to change the way your buildings look until 26. We don't want to do that with security. We know where some of the weak areas are, and we would address those right away with our bond when this bond passes. And we're already planning for that. It's almost like I'm holding it back. If that bond passes, we're going to let it go, and you're going to start seeing some of those changes immediately. Some of it we've already done with door security and alert systems. We'll be training staff and some of those things in the fall. But there is more to do. And so if this bond passes, we greenlight that and we start it right away. You had another question about buses. I don't have a timeline for purchasing buses. It probably won't happen in the 24-25 school year, but it'll start happening immediately after that. And we might buy one a year each successive year to make sure we have enough to last us. I've had a lot of questions about in the last week about our community rec fund and management of that, and simulating the management of that with the management of the rest of our district. A lot of it, I say phooey. It's not a very good comparison. But I will tell you that our community rec budget in some ways reflects what happens with a bigger bond like this, and how things can change. Um, we had a community rec millage pass in 2018-19. In 1920, the world changed, and I haven't seen it change back to the way it was in too many situations. We went into a global pandemic. Our focus became opening our schools, having school 5 days a week, and even opening our pool. We were one of the first schools to even open a pool during COVID. But nevertheless, some of the things we said we were going to do with the money, we changed our mind because the community changed, the society has changed, how we pay people, what people want to do outside, how they interact with their schools is different. And so I think we made some wise decisions and pivoted away from some things. At the same time, I mean, we've got a very robust community rec program right now. We've got record number of kids involved in baseball and softball programmings. So a wise investment, I think, for community rec would be to recognize that those are popular areas. Those are programs that are doing well. You should then match your facility investment into those areas. And that's what we're doing. We put $25,000 this year into Jennings Road athletic facilities, and we've got plans to put more. We've got a road maintenance plan now, a field maintenance plan, because our programs there are doing well. Our soccer program in the fall is doing very well also. We're getting ready to open that up. We think it's wise then, now you got a good program, match your facility investments to those programs that are doing well. Our pool is always, a big source of pride in this community, but we've had to invest a lot of resources into it to keep it running, and it is now doing very well. And we have a nice staff that we've invested in. So to me, our flexibility, our ability to look at what the community wants and adjust our spending is not an indictment, but rather just really showing that we're smart about how we use dollars and that we do react to what our community wants. Again, yeah, summer programming, we're doing very well with it. Thank you. Um, I talked a little bit about enrollment. People have asked me a little bit about what our enrollment looks like. I mentioned 25% growth. We did submit to Treasury a 5-year plan that shows that we will most of the growth that we'll be experiencing will be in our early elementary. Our Treasury Department, when they look at bonds and your qualifications for them, really only looks at K-12, and they only want to see 5 years. But like I said, we have a full daycare and early childhood program. Some of the bond dollars we're looking at will expand this. The more kids we put into those programs, the more kids can matriculate into our K-12 programming. It's not necessarily reflected in Treasury reports, but that is the reality of our situation, and we want to be prepared for that. That's part of transforming your district, getting ready for what is inevitably coming, and having facilities match the programs that are doing well. It's wise investment. Well, having seen no other questions, thank you for those who have attended this and have asked questions. Remember, August 6th is an important day for your consideration of these investments in your schools. If you have any questions about what we've discussed today or any of the information we put out to the public, please feel free to email us or contact us through info@wlps.net. A phone call works well too. Again, August 6th is an important day for our community. Please don't hesitate to reach out. We want you to know what's involved in this and why.